Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now, let's give a warm welcome to our main speaker, Jim.
Well, I'm Jim again, and I'm an alcoholic still. And I want to thank Bara for asking me to come out tonight. It's really nice. And it's an honor to speak at a meeting. And, you know, I guess when you've been around like I have a long time, you speak at, you get that opportunity once in a while, but it really is a special thing. I want to congratulate the other birthday people and the new people coming in, and the visitors, and and everybody. Okay. Bara said something about our childhood and things that happened in our childhood, and I don't think I had a drink before I was 7 or 8, and then we snuck it. You couldn't just sit down at a bar somewhere. When I was 13, I really got plastered, and a bunch of kids, we went up to this girl's house, and her parents were gone, and they had a bar, and so we made drinks. We didn't have any idea what we were making. We had brandy snifters, and we filled them up with a lot of stuff. It all tasted terrible, so we put in grenadine to sweeten. I mean, it was just, it was scotch and grenadine. You can imagine what we had. And they all went, "Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that." I drank mine. And got really sick. And couldn't wait to do it again. My father, I come from an alcoholic household, and my father was an alcoholic. And my mother was this sort of classic untreated Al-Anon. I also belong to Al-Anon. You'll know why in a minute. But my dad was a boozer, and he was very competitive with me. I found all this out later. I didn't know what the hell it was. I just thought he didn't like me. Well, he didn't. I say this a lot, but it's the truth. He didn't welcome having another male child in the house. There already was one, him, and it's hard to compete with your dad for your mother. I didn't even know that was going on. But he was volatile, and he was dangerous, and he tried to kill me a few times. And as a lot of us do who've grown up in these alcoholic households, I learned some behavior. I figured out how to stay alive, for one thing. And many of the behaviors that I learned were actually, for a child, were brilliant. I learned how to stay out of his way. I learned how to tell him what he wanted to hear, or tell anybody what they wanted to hear. I learned how to tell good lies. I learned how to disappear in front of your eyes. I'd be gone, I learned how to go numb when it got really scary. I learned how to just turn it off. I learned how to lie mostly to myself. I we were talking about Irish things earlier, and with a notable Irish lady here. And I remember someone telling me, an Irish girl telling me one time, she said, there's so many creative people that come out of these crazy families. She said, that's because when you're little, you get real good at making stuff up. And I thought, whoa, yeah, I invented my whole life. I invented all those childhood years and many years afterwards. And my father, as I say, he was frightening, he was dangerous, he was volatile and mercurial, and he was also charming, extraordinarily talented. He was handsome. He was a kind of a Renaissance man. He was an amazing person. And consequently, I didn't quite know what was wrong with me because everybody liked him. And, you know, he had airplanes, and he was one of those kind of guys, you know. He always had, you know, motorcycles and interesting things, and boys liked that stuff, you know, airplanes and boats and cars and fishing, and, you know, he liked stuff like that. He didn't so much like me liking it. But it's interesting because I invented this life, and I couldn't quite understand, and I still don't quite understand why it is that I couldn't wait to start drinking. You know, you'd think with all the abuse and all the carrying on and the tears and the, you know, and all the stuff that happens, you know, when your father's a drunk and drives into the garage door and all that, you know, you probably wouldn't want to drink so. I couldn't wait. And I had this image of myself as being sort of this dashing fellow. And I've told this story, but it's my story. I used to, you know, go to the movies, and some of them were movies that were old movies then. We used to go to a place called the Pick Fair down at Pico and Fairfax, and they ran old movies. They ran the Thin Man movies down there. And the Thin Man was, you know, I don't know if you've looked at one of those movies lately. They were made in the early 30s, I think, sometime. And everybody in those movies is drunk from beginning to end. Every scene opens with somebody coming in saying, God, I need a drink. And William Powell was in it. He was very, you know, very debonair, but always half in the bag. And I thought, geez, that's great. You know, this guy, he's so cool. And he catches the crook and he gets the pretty girl. And, you know, and the women were all wearing those gowns, you know, where they kind of, you can see, you know, stuff. I mean, it was, you know, it was good. And they drank and smoked with cigarettes. You know, they all smoked cigarettes and drank. Geez, it looked so good. And I mean, there was a scene in this one movie, and I saw it not too long ago. One movie, with the Thin Man movie, where she wakes up. It's like 3 a.m, and he's sitting on the edge of his bed. They had separate beds. You weren't allowed to sleep together in those movies. And he's sitting on the edge of his bed, and he's making a drink. And she says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm making a drink." She said, "Well, make me one." And I thought, God, what a girl, you know. What guy? That's for me. I married one of those. I think I married more than one. And anybody that, you know, I mean, this seemed like such a great life. It seemed, I don't know, it seemed kind of wonderful. And films were full of that at that time. You know, I guess they still are, you know, but now it's, you know, drugs and acid and, you know they make the bad part come out. But then it was sort of like wonderful. Everybody drank. And everybody drove around, and they were all rich. They were always in tuxedos, and they were driving around in open cars with shakers of martinis, and, you know. But what seemed wonderful to me was I was able to take on another persona. See, I had developed a way of becoming different people. You know, I'm always kind of reminded of that Woody Allen movie, you know, was it Zelig, right? Yeah, where the guy, you know, he meets this fat guy and he gets fat, you know, and he sees the Chinese guy, he becomes Chinese. It was just a wonder, and I thought, yeah, I identify with that. Because that's what I do. If you were a Republican, that's what I was. If you were a Democrat, yep, me too. And if you were in the same room together, you know, I would be both somehow. I found a way. I found a way to find approval. I found a way so I wouldn't, because it was dangerous in my household not to know things. It was dangerous in my household not to be on the right side. And from both parents, really. My mother wanted to make sure everything was wonderful and would tell me that, you know, the house could be burning down. My mother would say, "It's all fine, dear. Yeah. Everything's fine. It's okay. Don't worry about a thing." And I think she did it probably with a good heart. I don't think she meant anything evil by it, But nevertheless, there it was. I'd come home and say, Mrs. So-and-so is an old bat. Now, you're 7 years old. You know Mrs. So-and-so is an old bat. 7 years old know things like that. But my mother would say, oh, no, she's wonderful, and she loves you very much. And she went over, so you walk away thinking, Christ, that's love. I don't know. So I kind of drifted toward lower companions, and they always felt a lot more comfortable to me and safer somehow. And I started drinking heavily in high school. They called me the milkman in high school. They finally didn't know what to do with me. I kept being incorrigible and getting thrown out of schools, and even then, I was starting to get in fights, and stuff was happening. And they sent me finally to a military school, and they thought that'd straighten me out. That's where I learned to smoke grass. That'll straighten the boy out. Send him down there. So I did. I learned how to march and smoke joints. I mean, in those days, grass wasn't like it is now. I mean, grass was like you could smoke a lid, which we often did, and and you get a little buzz. But now, I guess you walk by something and you're wrecked. Times have changed. But I started getting arrested then. I started carrying a gun. This wasn't a new thing like high schools. Everybody's horrified that kids carry guns in school today. And I wasn't marching with one. I had one tucked away just in case. And I think I wanted to be a criminal. It sounded good. They had that language, and it sort of said half musician and half, it was tough stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's cool. I'll learn that language. And I did. But I liked booze. I liked drinking. I liked getting into bars. I liked that life. But it started getting nasty, and it started not being fun. I mean, I still had that sort of bravado stuff. They say, hey, I had a great time last night, but I was having blackouts. And I'm 17, 18 years old with blackouts and driving my car recklessly and having terrible crashes. And then I thought, well, the cure for all of this and this hysteria in my life is that I should get married. And I found this poor girl, and married her. And she didn't know any more than I did. And, except we both liked to drink, and we drank a lot together. We really drank a lot. And we got married. I continued to drink. She continued to drink. I continued to have misadventures. I began to get really sick and have those terrible hangovers. I was starting to get pretty sick. I was carrying a bottle around all the time along with the gun. With the gun I excused. I thought, I was sort of hoping there'd be some kind of a disaster. These were the days when guys were digging bomb shelters in the yards anyway, so I thought, yeah, there could be, an atom war or something. And of course I'd fantasize I would survive naturally, and I'd save the girl, and she'd love me, and it would be okay from then on. I always had those fantasies. Hell, I had one the other night. Well, save the girl. How many guys do that? You know that one. You're going to save the girl, and then she'll love you, and then it'll be wonderful. She's wonderful. She's the one. And it all comes out of for me, it came out of this terrible disaster, this bomb. I mean, it didn't occur to me that everybody be fried and be horrible. I just thought, it was sort of like a movie. I mean, my life was like that, and no wonder I got interested in that stuff. But the movie was having sort of bad side effects, and I was really getting sick, and I was having blackouts that were really nasty, and I would. I'd wake up 3 days later. I'd come to, and I'd gone to work. I'd actually functioned. I'd have no idea what I did, but I'd ask, sort of how you ask those questions. Everything going all right around here? Waiting to see. You threw up in the dubbing channel, guy, but it's all right. But no, we said, I guess you're all right. You're a little off today. they noticed I was a little off. I wasn't even there. I came to one time driving my car on the wrong side of the freeway, about 100 miles an hour, and tequila does that, and you just a lot of recognition. I sort of came out of this blackout, and here I am, and fortunately it was like 5 in the morning, and there were very few cars, but the ones that were there were pretty alarmed. I'll tell you, they're going by, you go, whoa! And somehow I got the car turned around. I got off the car. I got off an exit out there, where I didn't know where I was. I had no idea. I didn't know what state I was in. There were like trees and everything, and pine trees. I think, Jesus, where's this? And I got off the road and I found a news, one of those newspaper things, and I looked and I was in Carmel, and it was 3 days later. And I called my wife, we were still married. I called her up and I said, yeah, well, I'm in Carmel. And she said, oh, I wonder where you were. Yeah, she'd been loaded too all this time. That's the life. It got worse and worse, because my health then began to go to hell. And, my liver, I began to swell up. I turned yellow. My liver was going to hell. A doctor came and examined me, wouldn't give me insurance, one of those insurance doctors. They give you insurance if your heart beats once in a while. He just said, took a test. He said, "Do you drink, son?" And I said, "Well, I have a little wine with my meals." He said, "Well, you better check this out because you've got cirrhosis or you're on the edge of it." And he said, "You keep drinking, you're going to die." I said, "Oh, give me a break. What's an old fart like you know?" Well, he knew something because I was I was really in bad shape, and I was coming out of these things, and I find myself, holding on to the porcelain altar, and, I started drinking tomato juice in the morning so that I wouldn't see the blood when I threw up. And, yeah, I know. I didn't even remember that. I was in the meetings. I had been there 3 or 4 months, and they always say, you'll hear your story. Some guy got up and said, "Yeah, I was drinking Snappy Tom, and so I wouldn't see the blood." Yeah, that's the way I drank. That's the way I lived. I lived in this world. And one day, it was the day I came to, and it was so bad, and the hangover was so bad, and the remorse from the hangover was so bad. You know what that is, that disgust, itself, whatever, it's awful. And this was the worst it had been. And somehow there was like the curtain opened, and I really got a good look at what a loser, what a asshole I was. I mean, it really was clear. And I knew that I would never change. That I was going to be this way. That's it. That's how you are, dude. And it was like doom. It wasn't like it was doom. And I thought, I'm out of here. And I got the gun, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I stuck it in my mouth, and I was pulling the trigger. I didn't want to know from calling people and, I'm going to leave. Nothing. I just wanted to get out. It was so bad. I just wanted to go. And literally, as I was pulling the trigger, something, I think it was a spiritual experience, I don't know what else to call it, but something said, "Wait a minute," really clear. "Maybe you're an alcoholic." Says, "No shit." Well, it was news to me. I thought, whoa, me? God, you think? So I thought I was too young. I thought, you think, me? I knew my father was. He'd even gone to AA when I was about 10, I mean, all those famous guys in AA that you know about, they were hanging around the house, So me? So I called a lady that I knew was on AA. She had a couple of years, and she was like a zealot. She was married to this older man who was kind of a mentor of mine, and he and I used to get drunk all the time, and wreck our cars and all that stuff. But she was on AA, and she was like carrying the sword, AA, and she'd talk about that, and took me to a meeting. I called her. I said, "Would you take me to one of those meetings?" And she said, can you not drink today? Now, I'm an old people pleaser, and I said, of course. I had no idea if I could get through the day without drinking. I knew that this was one of those hangovers where you couldn't mess with it. You know, you had to have something. But I didn't. Somehow I got through the day. I went to a meeting that night. And I'll try to cut this the next 39 years down, but because I went to that meeting, and I can just tell you what I remember from it. What I remember was I heard, first of all, I remembered the people. There were like people here. There weren't as many, but there were people here. It's just an AA meeting. And I remember how nice they were. They were really nice to me. They still are. They were kind. There was a kindness. I don't know how to explain it. It was just, they were there. And I listened to the steps. I listened, the preamble, and we're men and women and blah, 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 all that stuff. And I thought it was okay. I mean, it didn't sound like, fuck, I can't, I thought I'd fake the parts that, were hard, like inventory and all that. Making amends. Well, I thought I didn't really owe anybody any amends anyway. I'd slugged this bartender one time, and there was those fights, but I mean, I couldn't even remember those. I mean, it took me a while, obviously it was my first night. But I still wasn't sure, I mean, I was young, and it was AA, and, it's kind of foreign to me, and spiritual stuff, I know about that, and then this woman got up and started to talk, and she was, I don't know, she didn't have much time, maybe 90 days or something, and she really had the marks of the disease on her, she was an old woman, probably 35 or something, and well, that was old to me, but she'd fallen off some bar stools, I mean, you could tell she'd exercised her right to drink herself to death, and I'm thinking, Jesus, poor old thing, and then she started to talk about hangover remorse. She started to talk about that feeling of self-disgust and self-hatred, and how I hated being that way, and all these things, and I was having hangover remorse. I mean, I'm sitting there having what she's talking about, and I knew at that moment that I was home. I knew then that I belonged, that I was like this, that I was like these people in this room. And the good news was, and the bad news was I was an alcoholic, but the good news was that there was something that could be done about it. There was something that could be done about me, because if I wasn't an alcoholic, I don't know what the hell I was. Just crazy. But I could do something about my life, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor or what color or any of the rest of it. That the principle's there, and they just kind of hugged me and just took care of me. And I resisted. I did everything wrong. You don't get it overnight, but over the years, there were things that really, really made a difference. One of them was sitting with somebody who actually took me through the steps, who actually did that. We sat down and we did it. And we took the book, and then the guy said, that's not enough, and he got the 12 and 12, and we did that book. And I loved doing it. I don't know. I mean, I resisted the stuff that made me uncomfortable, like having to cop to things I'd done, but it could be done, and they, I had a lot of trouble with higher power, I had a lot of trouble with that kind of stuff, and I wasn't really big on trust, and certainly trust this, whatever it is, and I'd been like everything else in my life. If you were religious, that's what I was, and if you weren't, then I wasn't either, I mean, I get along. But now this was saying that this is a program, a spiritual program, and that you have to come and to rely on this higher power, and it's up to you what it is. Now, my first higher power was worse than any Calvinist. I mean, my higher power was, man, he was a bad dude and tough, and you couldn't breathe. And until this sponsor, I got another sponsor, and this guy was as tough a guy as I've ever known in AA. But he sat with me and he said, wait a minute, you're kicking the shit out of yourself. I don't think God wants you to do that. God doesn't kick the shit out of you. I said, well, what do you think he does? I'm an alcoholic. He says, I think you kick the shit out of yourself, you know. I think God's there all the time. God is love. Somebody said it tonight. I mean, that's what I believe God is. God is love itself. And it's always there. Love doesn't go anywhere. Love is always there. This power is always there. It doesn't go anywhere. This is my belief. It doesn't have to be yours. I mean, Jesus, we all have our own. But that's how it sort of came to me. It started working with me. I could begin to see that. There were times in this program that were pretty hairy for me, and over the years, you know, my sponsor, this tough guy, says, all right, young man, I don't think you understand. You're young, and you started thinking you were special. And I did, you know, because a lot of the older people, in the best will, you know, they would say to me, oh, it's a wonderful young fellow like you, get sober. And they were right, of course it was. But I began to think, yeah, well, I'm a little smarter than you, you old farts. Yeah, I got it a little, you know. He says, no, you're not smarter than those guys. The difference is they're tougher than you. He said, you fell apart. You collapsed. You were ready to blow your brains out. You wouldn't have lived to be an old alcoholic. I didn't feel so smart then. But this man who was as tough as they get, and we had a lot of those guys around, and some of the old timers remember the Mike Rosses and the Larry Blakes and those guys, that Eddie Regans. These were the guys that took me by the hand, and these were the guys that were good to me. These were the guys that showed me how to live. Somebody said it taught him how to be a man, how to be all these things. And these guys taught me much of that stuff. And never once shamed me. Never once would these guys make me ashamed. They would knock my ass off, but they would... You know. About every 5 or 10 years, usually 5 years, I, over the years, have run into a wall. You know, if you stick around, you find that this happens. I haven't met anybody in here who has any time that hasn't run into the wall. You run into that. I ran into one when I was about 9. Somebody told me tonight, said she was born when I was 9 years sober, and I remembered being 9 years sober. That was the year I got a divorce, and this was from the wife, the alcoholic who didn't stop drinking when I did, and I just buried her this year, that wife. Never stopped drinking. Never got it, and I thought I was pretty smart, you know. I always secretly said, yeah, but you were the drunk. You're the one who fucked up the kids. You kept drinking. And I realized what a son of a bitch I was. I was making her be my scapegoat, you know. I mean, he was handy, an easy target. Now, I got to take responsibility for that too. But the beauty of this program is that when I was sitting with her in the hospital and she was dying, and I could hold this little husk of a hand she had because she was just a wreck. I mean, the nurses said, "Are you her son?" They asked me. And I could make my amends. And I could realize that this girl was really a teacher. You know, she really was a teacher. And for all I know, she came to this life to be some kind of a teacher, you know, and I'm having all these opinions. Maybe she did. Maybe she's some sort of spiritual hero, you know, that came. I do know that these hard times have come and they've gone. And every time they go, it's when I go back to the program. It's when I surrender to this program, when I give the hell up. 10 years ago, I was ready to commit suicide, literally. I wasn't kidding. I was back, almost that guy on the edge of the bed. And everything, the wheels had come off. And I was in a relationship with somebody who was absolutely wonderful. Probably saved my life. But I was tearing her skin off with my upset, my outrage, my disease, which was rampant. And I remember falling on the floor and saying, I give up. God damn it. You know, help me. Do something. Jesus. And I walked down the street the very next day and I ran into Jessica Overplace. Jessica says, hey, you must be getting up there now. Why don't you go to a meeting with me? I said, But that was the beginning. I went back to that meeting. I just said, well, okay. And I went back to a meeting, and I took a commitment. I started washing dishes, and my life began to blossom more than it ever has. Because I got out of me and started getting back in. I didn't know how much I knew about this program until I just kind of, I don't know what I was thinking. Not good things, anyway. The program is, in short, a program works. And I begin to see things. The growth is just amazing. I can actually feel affection come to me now, which I've never in my life allowed that in. I'd always said, yeah, well, you know. I think it's because, being the child of shame, being the one who always thought I was, not good enough, and, we hear all those kind of psychological statements, but I really believed it. My father didn't love me. That was a hard thing to come to. But when all these things began to happen, he and I were able to heal it. Isn't that remarkable? I came to the understanding that while a lot of this childhood stuff and a lot of the things that I got screwed up with weren't my fault, my life now is my responsibility. If I'm going to be happy, I'm the fucking guy who's got to be happy. And I was waiting around for him to make me happy, or somebody else. I thought, as Christian said, that if I had the right job and the right girl or whatever it was, that would make me happy. That would do it for me. They were my higher power. Look, if life isn't going well, you can't wait around for somebody else to fix it. If life isn't going well, then I'm the one who's got to have to make the change. What an idea. I'm the one who's going to have to make the change. I'm the one who's going to have to stick my hand out to a newcomer. I'm the one who's going to have to. We get that here. We get that here. We get so many blessings. I look at you and you just don't know how beautiful you are. You have no idea. I had two sponsors. I had one who kind of walked on water. He was one of those famous guys. And he said to me one time, he said, if you could see what you really are, if you could see yourself through divine eyes, you'd be blinded with your beauty. We don't know that. We can come and learn that here. That's the beauty of this program. That's the beauty of these rooms, that we come to learn these things. And I think it is when you start seeing the beauty in the other people. You start, letting them off the hook. That you begin to let yourself. We say that prayer all the time, Forgive us our trespass as we forgive others. That's how you do it. What a concept. It's all contained in the steps. This is a fabulous program, and I'm so blessed to be a member. And again, thank you, Bara, for having me here tonight, and thank you, everybody. God bless.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. And if that shows up, the gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.